A fruit capable of toppling an elephant, yet this woman eats it for every meal. Not only that, she even forces her 4 stepchildren to eat it. The entire village thought she had gone mad, but to their surprise, the mother and children were all perfectly fine. Due to a freak accident, Suyu transmigrated from an apocalypse into the body of a farmwoman. She was supposed to be an unmarried young woman, but she woke up as the stepmother of 4 little ones. The household was dirt poor, and the children's father was nothing more than a pretty face. He was lazy, gluttonous, and lived a carefree life, selling all the good family land for food and drink. Fortunately, his brothers found out, and under their pressure, they managed to keep 2 acres of remote land. So you didn't want to experience the apocalypse again, let alone the feeling of starving to death. She shouldered her hoe and headed out, but just as she reached the west end of the village, a timid girl's voice called out from behind her. So you stopped and turned around. 2 barefoot 4-year-olds, holding a water jar, stumbled toward her. These were the youngest twins of the Liu family. Why did you 2 follow me? Third brother and I came to bring mother water. If people don't drink water, they can't work. My stomach feels bad. That's not our mother. Second brother said we aren't allowed to call her mother. But I want a mother. Suyu felt a bit helpless, but what San Lang said was true. She was only their stepmother now, not their biological mother. Having only been with the Liu family for 2 days, it was normal for the children to be hostile toward her. Give me the water and you 2 go home. Xin Yang nodded obediently as she realized the road was long. San Lang glanced at Suyu before handing over the water jar. Hurry back now. San Lang took his sister's hand to leave. But Xin Yang broke free and ran to Suyu. Mother. Can you promise not to run away? The little girl looked up at her. Her innocent eyes filled with a longing for maternal love. Eldest and second brother said, when the stepmother sees how poor our home is, she will definitely run away. But she didn't want her mother to go. Their birth mother died after giving birth to her and her brother. They had never had a mother since they were babies, so they were especially envious of other children who had mothers. Such a fervent and pure gaze. How could Suyu resist it? She knelt down and patted the small head. Xin Yang, be good and go home to wait for me. Xin Yang was obedient. Go home and wait for mother. Watching the 2 children return to the village, Suyu shouldered her hoe once more, picked up the water jar, and continued forward. She walked upstream along the riverbank. Reaching a valley entrance, she turned and entered the mountains. After years of survival in the apocalypse, searching for food had become Suyu's instinct. The mountain forest before her was like a natural granary in her eyes. In autumn, wild beasts fattening up for winter are at their tastiest. Moreover, in these mountains, she didn't have to worry about sudden attacks from mutated plants or animals, nor did she have to fear zombies jumping out. However, Suyu overestimated her current body. Only 10 minutes into the mountains, her legs began to tremble. She quickly found a large tree to lean against, drinking some water to regain her energy. Looking at the withered yellow leaves on the branches, she even felt like stripping them off to eat. If this continued, she would lose her sanity from hunger. She had to find food fast. A rustling sound came from nearby. She immediately grabbed her hoe and followed it. However, the target was much faster than her, so you could only watch helplessly as a plump pheasant flew away from under her feet, leaving behind a single colorful feather. Suyu once again cursed Lu Ji to high heaven in her heart. If it weren't for this husband draining the household, leaving not a single grain of rice, would she be so hungry that she couldn't even catch a pheasant? Then she thought, if it was this hard for an adult, mustn't it be even harder for those 4 children? Recalling Xin Yang's expectant gaze, a burst of strength suddenly erupted in her body. She tossed the feather aside and continued her pursuit. Every cloud has a silver lining. She didn't catch the pheasant, but she found a large patch of taro. Contact with taro sap makes the body itch intensely. The villagers here didn't know how to process it and believed it was poisonous. Unless it was a year of extreme famine, no one would ever dig it up to eat. So you took her hoe and dug a few times. It was the high-yield variety with a great texture. She kept digging with excitement. She dug up over 20 pounds in one go. She gathered firewood on the spot and dug a pit to roast them. Lacking a fire starter, she used the bow drill method to start a fire. Soon, under the intense friction, the pine needles began to smoke. So you timed it right and blew on it. The pine needles caught fire instantly. Fearing a forest fire, she dug a circular fire break. She carefully watched the taro roasting by the fire. The aroma of food soon wafted out. So you swallowed her saliva, waiting until the taro were completely cooked. She couldn't wait to grab one and eat. The fluffy, soft texture had a hint of sweetness. She ate 5 or 6 in a row. Only then did the burning hunger in her stomach subside. The remaining 4 were for the children. She buried the embers with dirt to put out the fire, and continued digging more taro. With a full stomach, her strength was mostly restored. She could vaguely sense that her superpowers were slowly returning. The dug-up taro piled up into a small mound, estimated at 50 or 60 pounds. She found some vines nearby and fashioned a simple carrying net. She packed all the taro inside. Then she headed down the mountain toward home. On the way back to the village, she encountered villagers working in the fields. This new bride is truly pitiful. A perfectly good girl married off to Lu III. She's so hungry she's eating poisonous things. How tragic. Suyu didn't care about their sympathetic or disdainful looks. She just wanted to get home quickly to see how the 4 stepchildren were doing. Though they had survived this long without care, Suyu still felt uneasy. Even in the apocalypse, she had never seen such frail children. She felt the 4 warm taro in her shirt and sped up, rushing toward the Lu house. Unexpectedly, before she even reached the gate, angry shouting could be heard from afar, along with the panicked crying of children. Suyu's expression sharpened. She saw a crowd gathered at her doorstep. Lu Ji, who had been missing for days, was being chased by several village men. Lu De Lang and Lu Er Lang rushed in front of Lu Ji, trying to block the aggressive villagers. But instead of stopping the 2 children, the father dodged behind his sons and cheered them on. San Lang, Er Lang, kill them for father. But this was like hitting a rock with an egg. The 2 thin boys were shoved aside, falling hard onto the ground, twitching in pain. The twins stood at the doorway wailing. Don't hit my brothers. It's only right to pay back what you owe. If you don't pay today, we'll tear your house down. Lu Ji ran faster than a rabbit. Despite his messy clothes and pathetic actions, his handsome features still held a carefree charm. Several watching village women turned away in a hurry, afraid someone would notice their racing hearts. Lu Ji had nowhere to hide, and he was running out of steam. Seeing a wood-chopping knife about to swing down, "Stop!" Suyu roared. Her seemingly weak hand gripped the hilt firmly. Lin Erbao was shocked. Where did this woman come from? How dare she touch my knife? With sudden force, Suyu flung the man and the knife back. Who are you? We're here for Lu III's debt. What's it to you? Lu Ji finally saw who was in front of him. His eyes lit up, and he immediately hid behind Suyu. Wife, save me. Lu Ji was stunned, and so were Lin Erbao and the other debt collectors, looking at the boys on the ground with no one to help them, and the wailing twins. A nameless fire rose in Suyu's heart. Seeing that Lu Ji didn't look malnourished at all, but rather quite robust, she suddenly felt it would be better if the collectors just finished him off. So, before everyone's shocked eyes, Suyu kicked Lu Ji out. Every debt has its debtor. Go to whoever owes you money. Lu Ji, who they had chased for so long, was kicked out by his own wife. Although Lin Erbao didn't know what she was up to, he couldn't miss the chance. He immediately pinned down a stunned Lu Ji. Tie his hands and feet so he doesn't run. He is your debtor. Got it. Wife, what are you doing? I'm your husband. The magistrate himself performed the marriage at the government office. Suyu. Suyu. Ah. Shut up. Stop squealing like a dying pig. Take him away. Don't just do whatever. And don't leave him crippled. You can see my family's situation. We can't afford to keep him. So please, just finish him off for me. Is this woman playing with me? Brother, I'm serious. Remember, you must beat him to death. Do you really want Lu III's life for the debt? Yes, Suyu replied coldly. She didn't look at him again. She helped up the boys on the ground and checked their injuries. This is my home. Though we are just a woman and children. I, Suyu, am not to be trifled with. I've handed Lu Ji to you now. If you cause trouble at my door again and hurt my family, I'll risk my life to drag you down to hell with me. Lin Erbao realized this woman was tough, and considered backing off. De Lang and his brother were just weak from hunger. After falling, they were too dizzy to stand. Besides a few scrapes on their arms, there were no major issues. Suyu breathed a sigh of relief. She pulled the crying, snotty-nosed twins toward her. Though she had only been in their home for 3 days, the children felt as if they finally had someone to rely on. Mother. Xin Yang is scared. Don't be afraid, Mother is here. We're really taking him away then. Take him, I won't stop you. The crowd was speechless. Lin Erbao remembered how Suyu had easily pushed him aside earlier and was still a bit wary. He also didn't want the reputation of bullying a woman and children. Fine, you two can play out this drama here. I'll see who ends up crying. Luji was carried away like that. He looked back every few steps to see Suyu's expression, only to find she was completely unmoved. They say a day of marriage brings 100 days of grace, but this couple didn't have a shred of affection left, and strangely, none of the 4 Lu children came forward to stop them either. You're just trying to scare father. You don't really want Lin Erbao to kill him, right? No. I'm serious. The 4 Lu siblings looked at each other. Then the 3 brothers shouted for their father and chased after them like the wind. Unfortunately, their bodies were too weak. They were exhausted within a few steps, their legs giving way, their vision blurring. In no time, they all drifted back dejectedly. They looked at Suyu's busy silhouette, sobbing and whimpering. Next to arrive was Old Man Lu, who had hurried back from the fields. The father and his 3 other sons didn't see Lu Ji. They only saw the 4 siblings standing in the yard, trembling. Old Man Lu had a bad premonition. De Lang, where's your father? De Lang looked at his grandfather and uncles, then at Suyu inside the house. For a moment, he didn't know how to speak. Seeing the children remain silent and only look at the house, Old Man Lu gestured and they walked toward the door. The thatched hut where Lu Ji lived didn't even have proper mud walls. It consisted of 2 tiny rooms and a kitchen. That was essentially outdoors. It was just a stove built with stones, with a pot on top and an empty jar beside it. There wasn't even a fence around the yard. In a few steps, Old Man Lu and his sons stood before Suyu. This new wife the 3rd son brought home. Old Man Lu had seen her once before. 3 days ago, the shameless Lu Ji hung around the old family home, saying he was going to the county to pick up his wife. He borrowed 10 copper coins to rent an ox cart from neighbor Wang to bring her back from the county. At least Lu Ji hadn't forgotten he had a father. His elder, the scoundrel, brought the new wife to the old house, and she gave Old Man Lu a proper bow. The young woman was a refugee, penniless, wearing old clothes given by someone else, and very thin. Father, big brother, second brother, little uncle. Where is that rascal, the 3rd son? The 3 Lu brothers nodded to her, acting polite. He went to pay his debt. A man who would spend his last penny on a plate of peanuts? What is he using to pay his debt? If he has no money, he pays with his life. If you want to ransom him, fine. Use your own money to do it. I don't have a single penny anyway. Don't be so stubborn. If anything happens, come to the old house. We'll discuss it together. Old Man Lu thought she understood him and would come to borrow money to save Lu Ji. Only then did he feel slightly relieved. The 3 Lu brothers held deep resentment toward Lu Ji. Seeing Suyu's firm stance, they urged Old Man Lu to go home for lunch. Old Man Lu looked at the mother and the 4 children, gave a long sigh, and led his sons away. Suyu watched them leave, and then turned back to the 4 siblings. Are you hungry? The 4 nodded honestly. She was hungry too. She took the 4 still warm taro from her shirt, giving one to each child. Eat this to tide you over. Suyu looked over the dilapidated house again. The 2 rooms only had beds made of wooden boards, and bedding of an indistinguishable color. Forget hiding money. Even a mouse wouldn't find a place to hide. Fortunately, there was a stove and an iron pot. Since the water jar was empty and a proper meal was out of the question, they could only continue roasting taro. Suyu quickly started a fire. The 4 siblings stood behind her, looking at the fragrant taro in their hands, swallowing hard. In the face of food, they had long since forgotten that their scoundrel father had been carried off. San Lang and Xin Yang put the taro to their noses, smelling them and licking their lips while looking at their older brothers. De Lang watched Suyu bury the black lumps in the fire, and when they were done, she pulled them out, peeled them, and put a piece in her mouth. Only then did he nod to his impatient younger siblings. San Lang took a bite, and his eyes lit up. It's so fragrant. This is taro. It's naturally very fragrant. Suyu's voice suddenly rang out. The 4 siblings, who were chewing vigorously, froze instantly. Erlang's expression changed slightly. He heard from villagers that taro is poisonous. Eating it would lead to a strange disease. One would itch all over, and their skin would rot from scratching until they died. Suyu had just seen them, cautiously observing her actions. She finally understood their doubts. She gave a light laugh, and finished the taro in her hand. Raw taro sap makes skin itch. Just rinse it with water and you'll be fine. Cooked taro doesn't have that problem. Eat without worry. Saying that, she buried more raw taro in the ashes to roast. She piled the already roasted ones by the fire. Where's the bucket? I'll get some water. When I'm back, we'll clean the house. In its current state, so you couldn't even stand staying here for one night. De Lang finished his taro in 2 bites, went inside to bring out a heavy wooden bucket, told Erlang to watch the house, and set off with Suyu to fetch water. Suyu followed her stepson with the bucket. The two walked toward the village in silence. There was a well in the village, the water clear and sweet. All the villagers drew water from here. It was lunchtime for the villagers, so there were few people at the well. Delang expertly tied a rope to the bucket handle, dropped it down, and shook it a few times. The bucket flipped into the water, and soon it was full. The boy seemed to be struggling. There was no windlass or lever at the well, just a bare opening. Suyu stepped forward and took the rope. With just a bit of effort, she pulled the bucket up. Delang looked at her in surprise. As she lifted the heavy bucket of water, a spark of light appeared in his numb expression. They filled the 2 jars they had emptied in the morning. She washed another bucket and dropped it down. Imitating Delang's earlier movements, she drew a full bucket of water. Suyu carried a bucket in one hand and a jar in the other. Delang carried the other jar in his arms. Perhaps because it was the first time they could bring so much water home, the usually mature boy had an innocent smile on his face before they even reached the door. "I love you." Ha ha ha. Slow down. Xingyang tripped but scrambled up herself. She wiped her dirty hands, her face smudged with black as she giggled. She was even sensible enough to want to help carry the bucket. Seeing she wasn't hurt, Suyu felt relieved. She didn't let her carry it, telling her not to run and to follow slowly. But the little one didn't stop talking the whole way, asking if she was tired every 2 steps. Suyu could only patiently answer every question. Lang and Lang had already wiped the empty jar clean. The 3 brothers weren't very strong, and usually only used a small bucket to fetch water. This large jar hadn't been used in a long time. Suyu poured all the water into the jar. It was only a third full. It would take 2 more trips to fill it up. The house is too dirty. Lang, you 2 take the brooms and sweep the floor. Delang and I will continue fetching water. Oh, and boil a pot of hot water. We'll all have a wash later. But what about the fields? Other families have almost finished planting wheat. But we haven't even started. In Delang's eyes, nothing was more important than farming. The weather had been perfect these last 2 days. If they missed the window, the wheat wouldn't grow well. So you knew the importance of farming. But right now, they didn't even have wheat seeds. What would they plant? No rush for the fields. Let's clean up the room we're sleeping in tonight first. After filling the iron pot on the stove with water, she took the empty bucket and headed toward the village with Delang. Xingyang saw that her 2nd and 3rd brothers were still dazed, so she took a broom herself and began to sweep the house with great effort. Lang couldn't understand his stepmother's thinking. Why did she insist on cleaning up? "Second brother, if we don't listen, will the stepmother beat us?" The 2 brothers looked at each other, recalling Suyu's fierce appearance just now when she caught it with one hand. Lang shuddered. He immediately boiled water, swept the floor, and wiped the table. By the time Suyu filled the water jar, the 3 siblings had already swept the house floor clean. In the main room, the short, rickety table had also been wiped clean. Only the spider webs up high remained untouched because of their height. Suyu inspected the place and was fairly satisfied. Just then, the water in the pot boiled. She pulled out a heavy old wooden basin from under the bed, mixed in some hot water, and washed all 4 children clean. There was still a bit of water left in the jar, so Suyu also drew some hot water, went inside, and wiped herself down. After washing, taking advantage of the sun, she took a machete to the mountain, cut some tree forks, and made a simple drying rack. She brought out the clumpy bedding to air it out in the sun, to get rid of the musty smell and dampness. For the entire afternoon, Suyu didn't stop once. She was busy working all around the house. After hanging the bedding, she removed the straw from the beds and set it by the door to dry. After that, she went inside to sweep away the cobwebs and scrape the walls. Debris fell down with a clatter. The walls became visibly thinner. The quality of this house, let alone heavy snow, even a heavy rain could wash it away. What kind of life were you living before? Is this how people live? How could a decent life turn into this? It's simply unbelievable. Hearing this, the Lu siblings' faces turned red with shame. They lowered their heads in embarrassment. Because Lu Jijia's father didn't care, these children didn't know how to look after themselves. The village children wouldn't play with them, thinking they were dirty and ugly. Even if they did nothing and just walked near others, they would be scolded. She felt a bit confused. She wasn't being mean to them, was she? What's wrong? Do you know where there's any dry straw? Yeah. What do you need straw for? Suyu pointed at their bare feet and her own tattered straw shoes that were falling apart. Delang understood. Lang, Lang, and Xingyang's eyes suddenly lit up. Was their stepmother going to make straw shoes for them? Suyu followed Delang and Lang sneakily to Old Man Lu's recently harvested rice fields. Is it okay to take some now? Delang didn't speak, but judging by the speed of his practiced hands, he did this often. Dad said Grandpa's things are his, and his things are ours. Taking our own stuff is perfectly natural. Suyu was speechless. What kind of nonsense had Lu Jijia been teaching them? But looking at the large bundle of straw in her arms, She chose to stay quiet. The mother and two sons each carried a large bundle of straw and soon disappeared from the fields. The Lu house was secluded. Near the house, the three of them finally slowed down. Lang caught his breath, took a few quick steps to catch up, and asked, Suyu, are you going to make shoes for us? You know how to weave straw shoes? In our village, only the elderly know how. Suyu suddenly stopped. The two brothers behind her braked quickly. What is it? She tucked the straw under one arm, freed up a hand, and gave each of them a gentle swat on the head. What's with the you? So impolite. Call me auntie. The two of them were stunned for a moment, then breathed a sigh of relief. Auntie. That's more like it. Help me tear off the brittle outer layer. And keep only the strongest part in the middle. Oh. With a shout, the two brothers placed the straw under the eaves. They were quite obedient children. Suyu was secretly satisfied. Honestly, if she made them call her mother, not only would they be unwilling, but she would also feel awkward. Auntie was just fine, staying home. San Lang and Xin Yang heard the noise and came out. Suyu called to the two siblings and told them to call her auntie from now on. San Lang was a bit dazed. Aren't we supposed to call you mother? Silly, auntie is fine. We still have our own mother. Who wants to call an unfamiliar woman mother? San Lang, Xin Yang, say auntie. Auntie. Good. Go help me check the straw that's drying. Don't let the wind blow it away. Assigned a task, San Lang gave a shy smile and nodded. He happily picked up a small piece of wood to use as a stick, and stood guard seriously by the straw pile. I want anyang. I want anyang. I want anyang. The youngest sister was too small to reason with. Sigh. Suyu sighed softly. She waved her hand, signaling the troubled young boys to process the straw. She gently coaxed the little attachment on her leg. She can call me anyang. Or she can call me auntie. She can call me whatever she wants. Just be a good girl, okay? Xin Yang really was a good baby. She gave her a small handful of straw as a toy. Sit nicely and don't run around. After settling the little one, Suyu led the two older ones to start weaving straw shoes. She used the machete to shave some branches to use as a frame. She twisted the straw into thin ropes before placing them on the frame to weave the shoes. Lang and Lang were small and lacked strength. The ropes they twisted were very loose. They could only help with processing the straw. Suyu did the rest of the work herself. For the whole afternoon, Suyu was twisting ropes. Her palms were rubbed so much they felt like they'd spark. Before she finished all the straw they had brought today, the sun was setting. She rolled up the ropes and put them inside first. She moved the fluffy bedding and straw back into the house. She rearranged two beds. She removed half the bed boards from the main room, leaving only a single bed. The space immediately became larger. She placed the short table used for dining in the middle of the room. This area became a multifunctional space. The four children would sleep separately in the small room. She brought the bed boards from the main room and widened their bed frame. This way, the four children wouldn't be crowded sleeping together. The freshly made bed gave off the scent of straw and sunlight. Xin Yang crawled onto the bed and rolled around. Anyang, it's so soft. For dinner, Suyu made boiled taro. There was still plenty of taro in the mountains. If they dug it all up, it should last for a month. In the short term, she didn't have to worry about starving to death. However, the current temperature wasn't good for storage, so they'd only dig it up when they needed to eat. At night, Suyu began weaving under the torchlight. Straw shoes. The twins were yawning repeatedly, so she told them to go to bed. But the two were unwilling, staring expectantly at the straw shoes in her hands, waiting for their new footwear. Suyu felt both pained and helpless. The villagers here had no nightlife at all. To save on lighting costs, they went to sleep at nightfall. Lu Jiji's house was also in a remote spot. At night, the howls of wild beasts occasionally echoed from the mountain. Under the influence of this atmosphere, Lang and Lang finally remembered their father, who had been carried away. After some inner struggle, they finally couldn't help but speak up. But just then, Suyu finished the first pair of straw shoes, long and neatly woven. This pair is for Lang first, she said, and picked up more rope to start the second pair. She was very tired today too. She planned to make one for herself and then rest. Lang choked back the question he was about to ask, but seeing these tightly woven straw shoes, the boy took them in his hands with delight. Under the envious gazes of his siblings, he held them against his feet. They were just the right size. Although Lang and the other two were also envious, they knew they'd get get their share and waited patiently. But Suyu only made 2 pairs tonight. The 3 siblings had to go back to bed with some regret, looking forward to tomorrow. The next day, Suyu put on her new straw shoes. After eating 2 taros, she went out with her hoe. She quickly dug up 2 bags of taro and returned. Her current goal was to restore her health as soon as possible. Once she recovered, she'd fight the mountain beasts again with proper equipment. At home, the children had already prepared breakfast. They waited for her return to start eating. This was quite unexpected to Suyu. Perhaps because the food was brought by her, they assumed she had the right to distribute it. The family happily finished 8 pounds of taro. During the meal, Sin-young occasionally acted spoiled and asked to be fed. After breakfast, under the expectant looks of the 3 children, Suyu picked up the straw rope to weave more shoes. It took a full day to finish 3 pairs of small straw shoes. She even made an extra adult-sized pair. The children carefully washed their feet and put on the new shoes. They walked around the yard, looking at their stepmother Sue with a sense of satisfaction. In their eyes, there was an unconscious growing closeness. Lang looked at the extra pair of straw shoes. "Auntie, can I take these shoes to the village to sell? Can they be sold?" Lang wasn't sure either, but he wanted to try. Even if they couldn't get money, exchanging them for some vegetables would be good too. So you hadn't expected this boy to have such a business mind, so she nodded and agreed. The 4 siblings carefully carried the pair of straw shoes toward the busiest well in the village. The water jar at home was empty again, so you picked up the bucket, locked the door, and followed the 4 siblings to get a bucket of water. She didn't have high hopes for selling the straw shoes, but she decided to observe secretly. To her surprise, after Lang called out to sell them, people actually gathered around to look at the shoes. After some bargaining, they exchanged them for a bunch of greens and a loofah. The 4 siblings were overjoyed. They hurriedly took the vegetables and ran to Suyu to show off their achievement. Suyu smiled and gave the 4 of them a thumbs up. Looking at the back of the woman who had taken the straw shoes, an idea formed in her mind. Perhaps she could make more straw shoes and exchange them with the villagers for daily necessities. Oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, and tea. They were so poor, they couldn't even put together 5 sets of bowls and chopsticks. They only had 1 water bucket, and the water jar was tiny. She had to fetch water 4 or 5 times a day. It was a huge waste of time. Let's set a small goal first. Trade for another wooden bucket and a shoulder pole. Suyu spoke seriously with her hands behind her back. Lang and Lang were full of energy. Let's borrow some straw from your grandpa's field first. We'll pay him back once we make some money. What do you think? The 2 brothers looked at each other without a hint of hesitation. They turned around and ran toward Old Man Lu's field. The 5 family members had a clear division of labor. Lang and Lang were responsible for transporting the raw materials. Lang and Sin-young were in charge of the preliminary processing. Suyu was in charge of twisting the straw ropes. In less than a day, a large roll of straw rope was piled up in front of the house. It was enough to make at least 10 pairs of straw shoes. "Auntie, all the straw from the field has been moved." Suyu looked at the large roll of straw rope beside her, then at the pile of straw inside the house, and nodded. She relieved them of their transport duties and moved them into the twisting instruction group. They aimed to have the first batch of straw shoes ready by tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, at the Lu family's old house, Old Man Lu held a bowl of bitter tea, sitting on the threshold and looking toward the east end of the village. Soon, 2 figures came running from that direction. "Grandpa, the straw in our field has been stolen." "Stolen? Which immoral person stole it?" "It was all stolen by the 3rd sons Lang and Lang. Someone saw them moving it back and forth several times." "Oh, then it's fine. Grandpa, you promised to make me a new bed today." "This makes me so mad. I'm going to get our straw back right now." The 2 rascals rolled up their sleeves to head toward the village. "Both of you, stop right there. Both of you, stop right there." It wasn't until Old Man Lu shouted again in anger that the 2 of them turned back, faces full of grievance and resentment. "Your mother has already made dinner. Eat first." "Did you intentionally leave it in the field for them to steal?" At first, he only suspected it. Originally, the rice would be brought home to dry immediately after being cut, for fear of it being stolen by busybodies in the village. But his father insisted on leaving 1 acre, saying they were busy with other things, and that they'd harvest the grain later. Seeing that the old man didn't even argue, a fire of anger rose in Lu Fei's heart. He was both aggrieved and furious. The straw at home isn't even enough for Jin Bao's bed. Jin Qi, the straw under the bed has been chewed up by rats. It's about to get cold. How can he sleep on that bed? If you don't care about me, fine. But Jin Bao is the eldest grandson of this family. As his grandfather, don't you feel sorry for him? Brat, how dare you speak to your father like that? It's my land. I'll do whatever I want with it. I don't need you barking at me. Dad, how can you be so biased? What is so good about that 3rd son, Lu? What's good about him? There's nothing good about him. I wish I had never fathered that wretched son. And you? if you talk back to me one more time, I'll teach this unfilial son a lesson for defying his elders. He raised his tea bowl, about to discipline Lu Fei. Fortunately, the family came over to separate them, and Lu Fei escaped. Zhang Shi quickly signaled her youngest son to go inside. Meanwhile, she tried to calm old man Lu down regarding the straw. She had guessed it long ago. The weather was getting colder. The third son's family only had a newly arrived, clueless wife. If they didn't leave them some straw, how would they survive the winter? However, Zhang Shi was also very angry. It had been 2 days since the third son's incident, and she hadn't visited once. She wouldn't really want him to die out there and never come back, would she? Old man Lu was startled. Surely not? The couple looked at each other, having a bad premonition. At the dinner table, Zhang Shi put down her bowl, looking worried. She ordered her eldest grandson, Jin Bao, go to your third aunt's house and see what they're doing. Come back and tell me. When Lu Jinbao arrived sneakily, Suyu was in the kitchen preparing dinner. She lit the fire and put on the pot to cook a loofah and vegetable soup. She hadn't cooked for 10 years. In the apocalypse, everyone ate dry rations. Only when making instant noodles would she boil water, so Suyu's cooking skills were practically non-existent. But looking at that pot of clear soup, the 4 siblings couldn't help but swallow their saliva. Although it had no salt, they ate with great relish. With a bowl of steaming vegetable soup and the boiled taro, San Lang's little face looked extremely satisfied. Big brother, if only we could have soup and taro every day. That would be wonderful. Just eat and don't overthink it. You're so easily satisfied with just a bowl of soup. I'm not like that. In the future, I want to eat white rice and fatty meat. But based on the living standards of Lu Village, white rice and fatty meat were already top tier. Even for a family like Old Man Lu's, they wouldn't necessarily get white rice and a few slices of fatty meat even during holidays. After finishing their meal, Suyu called over the 2 older ones to continue helping her twist the straw ropes. The 2 brothers were young and had little strength, but with some practice, the ropes they twisted were usable. By the light of the fire, Suyu began weaving straw shoes. This time she wove straw shoes that could wrap around the feet. They were much more refined, but considering the market situation in Lu Village, Suyu would rather put in more effort. If they couldn't be sold in Lu Village, she would take them to other villages. Someone would eventually want them. For now, eating enough was more important. The taro in the mountains wouldn't be enough to last them through the winter. The house was not far from the riverbank. The sound of gurgling water was clearly audible. Suyu's heart calmed down involuntarily. Looking toward the riverbank, she noticed Lu Jinbao hiding behind the fence of the house, quietly observing everything. Suyu pretended not to notice, wanting to see what he would do. To her surprise, the little guy just crouched there. After watching them finish dinner, he ran away. Suyu found it inexplicable. She lowered her head and continued weaving. Of course, it was also possible that Old Man Lu discovered the straw in the field was gone and sent the boy to investigate. But now that the straw was already woven into shoes, there was nothing they could do even if they came. The next day at the crack of dawn, Suyu took Delang and Erlang up the mountain to chop wood. To the 2 brothers, these mountains were full of danger. They didn't dare enter the mountains to gather wood. They usually just picked up discarded branches at the foot. On the way to the foot of the mountain, Suyu asked out of curiosity, "How did you spend the winters in previous years?" "There's a charcoal seller in the village. He knows how to burn charcoal. Sometimes there are charcoal remnants left in the kiln. My brother and I would go pick them up." Pick them up? Wasn't it more like stealing? The 2 brothers were instantly silenced. Suyu looked at them and gave a serious warning. "You are not allowed to steal from others anymore. We will stockpile enough wood ourselves. There's no need to do such things." Delang and Erlang's expression stiffened. Then they felt humiliated and angry. They felt she didn't understand the reality of their hunger. They sped up their pace. Suyu chuckled inwardly. It seemed that having a full stomach these past few days had increased their strength. Then she would have them bring back more wood. Arriving at the middle of the slope, Suyu chose a spot where the trees were dense. She threw down the rope and told the brothers to wait on a flat clearing. She took her machete and entered the bushes. Suyu first cut 2 tree forks and made a 3-legged firewood rack for Delang, then went deeper to chop wood. She was extremely fast. Soon she had gathered a large pile. Delang and Erlang looked at each other in surprise. So much wood. But they soon realized it was almost too much. Delang thought his stepmother was planning to carry it home in batches. To his surprise, Suyu tied it into 2 large bundles and hoisted them up. She even thought the weight was a bit light, so she took a few more branches from Delang's rack and added them. Only then did they pack up to head home. The mother and 2 sons came down from the mountain. They had to pass through the village fields to get home. The villagers first noticed the wood resting horizontally on Delang's shoulders. Only as they got closer did they see a fork holding the wood. Delang was holding the 2 extended legs of the fork and carrying it on his shoulder. He was walking easily, yet the amount of wood was more than if it were tied up. Why hadn't they thought of making a firewood rack before? It didn't look difficult. Just a wooden board across 2 vertical forks, but it saved so much effort on the shoulders. Then, their gazes were involuntarily drawn to 2 large bundles of self-moving firewood. Those bundles of wood must have weighed at least 250 pounds. Isn't that the new wife from the third son's family? How does she have so much strength? The villagers stared blankly as the mother and sons walked past them. They watched until they disappeared from sight. Their jaws, dropped in shock, slowly closed. Soon, news that the third son Lu had married a strong woman spread throughout the village. In the evening, Suyu led the 4 siblings to set up a stall near the village well with the finished straw shoes. She nodded to the 4 little ones standing in a row. San Lang and Xin Yang spread a tattered straw mat under a tree. De Lang and Er Lang untied the 10 pairs of straw shoes they were carrying. As they spread them out, Suyu tidied them up. She placed a wooden sign on the ground, straw shoes, 3 when a pair. Although they were afraid of the strong she-devil, the villagers couldn't resist their curiosity and gathered around. However, as they could only recognize the number 3, only a few people could really read the sign. Suyu patted Er Lang on the shoulder. After observing for a few days, she discovered that Er Lang was the most thick-skinned kid and the one most willing to put himself out there. Upon receiving the signal, Er Lang immediately started hawking, selling straw shoes. Fine workmanship, 3 when a pair. The villagers were startled. Then they realized they were selling straw shoes for only 3 when. You could take home a pair of finely woven straw shoes. 3 when won't break the bank. And it won't lead to regret. Just 3 when. Just 3 when. You can have a pair of comfortable and durable straw shoes. If you don't have money, trading goods is fine too. The price of 3 when a pair was something Suyu had researched based on the villagers' spending habits and the value of the vegetables exchanged yesterday. She had calculated it carefully. Sure enough, everyone was tempted by the price and even more tempted by the bartering option. Although they were just calling Suyu a she-devil moments ago, that was mostly just jokes and gossip. With such an affordable price, they didn't care about that. Straw shoes were a necessity for every household. A woman crouched down in front of the stall. Xin Yang immediately picked up a pair and held them out to show her. Auntie Zhou, the shoes my stepmother makes are very good. Please buy a pair. Suyu was a bit surprised. She thought Xin Yang was timid and clingy, and hadn't expected her to take the initiative to sell. With the children working so hard, Suyu, as an adult, felt embarrassed just standing there. She put on a smile and actively explained how sturdy her weaving was. The woman, whom Xin Yang called Auntie Zhou, turned the shoes over and over to inspect them. The craftsmanship was indeed solid, and the size matched her husband's feet. Lately, the men in the family had been working hard in the fields, and the straw shoes on their feet were already worn out. She was just thinking about getting new ones. Young sister, I'll take 2 pairs. Could you give me a bit of a discount? Alright, for the very first sale, I'll give you 2 pairs for 5 when. Having secured a bargain, sister-in-law Zhou was happy. She set aside the straw shoes she had selected and signaled for them to wait. Suyu waited as she ran home and brought back exactly 5 when. She counted them 3 times before handing them to Suyu, then happily took away the 2 pairs of straw shoes. With the first sale made, and 2 pairs at that, all 4 of the Lu children began to smile. Er Lang shouted even more vigorously. Xin Yang specifically looked for the aunties because she realized the aunties were the ones with the money. Seeing his sister being so brave, San Lang plucked up his courage and followed her. Do you want to buy shoes? Please buy a pair. The 2 siblings worked together and sold another pair. They looked at Suyu with surprise, their faces seeking praise. The straw shoes sold more and more smoothly. Someone brought over spare bowls from home to trade. 5 coarse porcelain bowls with some chips were exchanged for a pair of shoes. Another mother brought 3 eggs to trade for a pair. Before they knew it, it was dark. The families returned home for dinner. Finally, only Suyu and the 4 children remained, excitedly counting today's harvest under the tree. In one evening, they sold 6 pairs of straw shoes. They gained 11 copper coins, 5 coarse porcelain bowls, and 3 eggs. 1 egg could be sold for 1 when. If they saved up more, they could take them to town to sell on market day. That would be several more when. Suyu counted out 6 copper coins. She planned to go buy some oil and salt. She left the 4 siblings to wait there, while she walked quickly toward the peddler's house. The peddler's house was easy to find because he had specifically left a storefront at his gate, visible at a glance. Coming to the gate, she saw their high courtyard walls made of neatly piled stones. Suyu was deeply envious, but she firmly believed her own home would have this soon enough. Who is it? A customer. I want to buy some oil and salt. The door opened with a creak. Yun Yang, the peddler's wife, looked suspiciously at the slender and pretty woman at the door. You are? I'm from the Lu family at the far end of the village. My name is Suyu. I've just arrived in the village. Sister-in-law, you probably haven't seen me before. Yun Yang. Who is it? The peddler also walked over. He had seen Suyu once and recognized her instantly. It's the wife of the 3rd Lu brother. Suyu nodded. The more Yun Yang observed Suyu, the more she pitied her. She looked capable and could even weave straw shoes, yet she had married a scourge like Lu Ji. What a hard life. Seeing how thin Suyu was, Yun Yang nudged her husband. Straw shoes sell for 5 or 6 when a pair in town. Why don't you help this younger sister-in-law sell them? Just bring the money back to her directly. It's not much trouble. The implication was not to take a middleman's fee. No. Business is business. Life is hard for everyone. You need to make a profit too. I sell them at the village well for 3 won a pair. If you take them to sell, how about I give them to you at 5 won for 2 pairs? The peddler quietly pried his wife's pinching hand off his arm. Alright then, I'll take them to sell first. Once they're sold, I'll give the money to you. How's that? So you readily handed over the 4 pairs of straw shoes she had. Then I'll leave it to you. If they sell well, I have more stock. I can make sizes for men, women, and children. No problem, no problem. How much oil and salt do you need, sister-in-law? Suyu's pockets were empty, so she could only buy 2 liang of vegetable oil and 2 liang of coarse salt. It came to exactly 6 won. She hadn't brought a container. Yun Yang kindly lent her a bamboo tube for the oil. She wrapped the salt in a banana leaf and handed it to Suyu. Then tomorrow morning, I'll have Delang return the bamboo tube to you. Taking the oil and salt, she left and returned to the village well. The 4 children immediately surrounded her, looking excitedly at the bamboo tube and banana leaf. Smelling the scent of vegetable oil, their long empty stomachs began to growl. Ha ha ha, let's go. Time to go home and cook. The 4 siblings nodded repeatedly, their eyes shining. They jogged all the way home, especially looking forward to tonight's dinner. As soon as they got home, Delang replaced the old washing net, brought out a bowl, and lined it with straw, intending to use it for the eggs. Even though they were salivating just looking at the eggs, they had never thought of eating them. Such precious things should be saved and sold for money. That money could buy more brown rice for several more meals. And so, Delang excitedly took the straw-lined bowl to the kitchen to find Suyu. Just as he was about to speak, his eyes widened. He saw Suyu deftly crack the 3 eggs and drop them into the already boiling water. A stir with the chopsticks, a sprinkle of salt, a drop of vegetable oil, and finally a handful of wild onions she had just picked by the river. Instantly, an incredibly alluring and fresh aroma filled the air. Lu Delang, who hadn't tasted anything savory in forever, swallowed hard. He then unhesitatingly dumped the straw out of the bowl. The 4 siblings gathered around the stove, staring unblinkingly at the egg soup bubbling in the pot, their eyes gleaming with desire. Suyu divided the pot of soup into 5 bowls as usual, ensuring each person had 3 or 4 bits of cooked egg. The taro had been buried in the embers earlier. By the time the soup was ready, the taro was cooked too. The remaining handful of greens from yesterday was stir-fried by Suyu with a tiny bit of oil. The small bowl of soup looked vibrant and appetizing. Food with oil and salt was truly different. Suyu said, "Let's eat." Inside the house, aside from the sound of eating, there was no other noise. After dinner was finished, Delang took it upon himself to clear the table and wash everything clean. Suyu moved her straw ropes to the doorway and continued weaving shoes by the light of the torch. The children, licking the lingering taste from their lips, actively did whatever work they could, hoping for another meal like this tomorrow. In the mornings, Suyu took Delang and Erlang up the mountain to stockpile firewood. At noon, she wove shoes at home. In the afternoon, when the villagers returned from the fields, she would set up her stall by the well to sell shoes. Every 2 days, she would go alone to Nanshan to dig up enough taro for 3 days. The rest of her time was spent either weaving or on the way to sell shoes. The first group of people who bought the shoes found them comfortable and sturdy, so they placed more orders. The 4 pairs she left with the peddler were taken to town. A sharp-eyed farmer bought 2 pairs at once at 5 won a pair. The peddler made a decent profit. He actively promoted the remaining 2 pairs, which also sold quickly. Those who missed out even pre-ordered a few pairs. Consequently, Suyu received an order from the peddler for 5 pairs each of men's and women's shoes, plus payment for the first 4. It was 10 won in total. Sales in the village were also going well these past few days. Between stock sold and pre-orders, Suyu now had a total of 51 copper coins in hand. 51 won might seem like a lot, but it wasn't even enough to buy a thin cotton quilt. Suyu sighed. Lu Halan is back. Go to his house and buy 2 caddies of brown rice. Hearing that the food was improving again, all 4 siblings looked over at once. Lang excitedly took the money and dashed off. Delang, worried, followed him. San Lang and Xin Yang sat on small wooden stools, watching their brothers' departing backs, licking their lips in anticipation. They were young, so Suyu didn't make them work. She wanted the 2 little ones to get healthier, if conditions allowed. Delang and Erlang needed to be cared for properly too, but there was no way. Current conditions simply didn't allow it. She had relied heavily on these 2 little helpers lately. Without them, she would have been lost. Having bought the rice, the brothers hurried home in high spirits. After eating their fill with Suyu for a few days, the color in their faces had visibly improved. When Lu Bo was returning from the field with Jin Bao, he saw the 2 brothers running toward him, and almost didn't recognize them. Delang and Erlang stopped in their tracks and turned to look. Erlang even tightened his grip on the jar in his arms, looking wary. Seeing it was their eldest uncle, they finally relaxed. Where are you 2 going? It's going to rain in 2 days. Have you finished planting the wheat? The 2 boys glanced at him without a word, then turned and ran off. Lu Bo sighed helplessly. He wanted to look after these 2 poor kids, but seeing their silent, cold attitude, he felt his kindness was being met with a cold shoulder. It was very frustrating. Forget it, let them be. Even their own father doesn't care. Dad, we don't have to go to the fields tomorrow, right? Yeah, no more. We're finished planting. After being so busy, we can finally catch our breath. Lu Jinbao was overjoyed. Finally, no more farm work. The two returned home starving. The women had just finished setting out the food. Old man Lu Zhong from the other field, and Lu Fei then entered the house. The whole family picked up their bowls and started eating. Suddenly, there was a knock at the courtyard gate. When they saw who it was, everyone was full of surprise. Suyu stood at the gate and called out to them. The two brothers were forced to greet everyone one by one. Mrs. Zhang asked tentatively, "Third son's wife, have you all eaten?" "We have." As soon as she said it, there was a collective sigh of relief. As long as she wasn't here to scrounge a meal. "Everyone, please continue eating. Don't mind me. I have something to discuss with father and mother." She headed toward them. The two elders felt a surge of excitement. Finally, she's here to borrow money to bail him out. But they still feigned confusion. They gestured for the family to keep eating and invited Suyu and the two sons into the main room. To their surprise, Suyu's first words were, "I'm here to buy wheat seeds from you." The elders were stunned. She's not saving the third son? Suyu, of course, saw the rapidly shifting emotions in their eyes. But so what? Lu Ji must have been beaten half to death by now. Having lived in the apocalypse for so long, Suyu had her own way of survival. Any person or thing that threatened her life and safety, she would deal with in advance. In her current situation, it was best if Lu Ji stayed gone, so Suyu acted like she didn't notice their mood. 2 caddies of wheat seed. Name your price. As soon as Delang and Erlang got home, they told her about meeting their eldest uncle, Lu Bo. Suyu thought about it. She should probably plant those 2 mu of land. If she didn't plant anything, there would be nothing. Maybe after getting through this winter, they could harvest some grain. "You haven't started planting wheat yet?" "It could rain at any time. I was busy and the family was in that state. I've only just recovered a bit these last few days. I'm thinking of planting those 2 mu. Next year, no matter what, we'll have a bit of a harvest." "Father, I've never farmed before. Please give me some pointers." What Suyu said was true. Her original family's situation was actually okay. If it hadn't been for natural disasters and war, with so many brothers at home and plenty of land, it wouldn't have been her turn to work the fields. Old man Lu hadn't expected her not to know how to farm. He didn't know what to say. Thinking about his third son and seeing Suyu's indifferent attitude, he felt a bit angry. He gave Mrs. Zhang a look, signaling her to go get the wheat seeds. Fortunately, they had drawn some extra seeds earlier, so there were some left after planting their own land. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had any to give Suyu. Life wasn't easy for the people in the old Lu residence either. Their clothes were patch upon patch, and they ate coarse rice. This old house only had a few more rooms than Suyu's, and an extra perimeter wall. The father and sons worked from the beginning of the year to the end, just to barely feed the 9 people in the family, not to mention a troublemaker like Lu Ji. The little money they managed to save was basically used to clean up his messes. Mrs. Zhang handed the jar of wheat seeds to Suyu, and carefully instructed her on how to plant them. Suyu noted these details, confident that it wouldn't be difficult. She'd give it a try tomorrow. She pulled out 5 copper coins. "I've never bought wheat seeds, so I don't know if this is enough." Mrs. Zhang's eyes bulged as if she'd seen a ghost. When Suyu said she wanted to buy seeds, she thought she was just being polite. After all, given the third son's character, it was already good enough if she didn't come to take money from them. But looking at it now, the third son and his wife really didn't seem like they belonged together. Seeing Mrs. Zhang's shock, Suyu didn't care if it was enough money or not. She stuffed it into her hand, took the seeds, and left with Delang and Erlang. They had only walked a few steps when the brothers Lu Bo and Lu Zhong suddenly caught up. Each pulled out a handful of copper coins. They pulled them together and handed them to Suyu. "We don't have much, but the third brother's life is at stake. Take this and go redeem him first. We'll figure out a way for the rest. Mother says Lin Erbao owns a black mine. He won't kill those who offend him right away. He'll just throw them into the mine to work off their debt. Third brother might be fine. If he learns his lesson this time, maybe he'll change for the better. Only if the 2 of you stick together will life get better." Suyu raised an eyebrow. Lu Ji is this rotten. Yet he still has family helping him out. Unbelievable. Delang and Erlang both looked at the woman expectantly, hoping she would take the money. No need. This money isn't enough to redeem him. Giving it to them would just be throwing it into a bottomless pit. You should keep it for yourselves. With that, she turned and strode toward home, the light in her eyes growing colder. Delang and Erlang looked at their 2 uncles hesitantly, then lowered their heads and chased after Suyu. Lu Zhong chased after them for a few steps helplessly. He didn't know how mother and sons could run so fast. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the night. He had to stop and look at Lu Bo for help. "Big brother, this money. How could she not want it?" The 2 brothers went home and told everyone about Suyu's refusal. She doesn't sound like someone who wants to live with a third brother. If third brother doesn't change, he'll be a bottomless pit. Forget it, forget it. We'll think of another way. A strong wind suddenly picked up during the night. Suyu was jolted awake from her sleep. She opened her eyes to a brilliant starry sky. The thatch on the roof had been blown away by the wind, leaving a huge hole. The wind was still howling. The few thin beams on the roof shook incessantly under the force. She could hear the sound of the wall plaster peeling and falling. The whole house felt like it was on the verge of collapse. "Oh no, is this house about to fall on me? Mother!" Xin Yang's cry came from the next room. Suyu quickly pushed aside her shock, hurriedly got out of bed, put on her shoes, and ran out. De Lang, Er Lang, San Lang, Xin Yang, come out quickly. The 4 children were huddled together on the bed in panic, watching as the thatch overhead was blown away piece by piece. Xin Yang just kept crying for her mother in fear. De Lang tried to stay calm as he held his younger siblings in his arms. Suyu's heart tightened. Why aren't they running? She rushed forward, scooped up San Lang and Xin Yang, and shouted to De Lang and Er Lang, come out quickly. The 4 children were startled. De Lang and Er Lang scrambled off the bed. In their panic, they didn't even care about their shoes and followed Suyu out barefoot. The 5 of them huddled together in the clearing, watching anxiously as the thatch flew off the house in the wind. It looked as if it could collapse at any moment. They waited and waited until the wind finally died down. That seemingly fragile little house still stood stubbornly before them. But looking at the thatch scattered on the ground, and the house that was now mostly just beams, with a few pieces of thatch left, Suyu didn't know whether to be relieved or sad for a moment. The house was saved, but replacing the roof would definitely cost a lot of money. With only 40 copper coins left in her pocket, she felt as though the heavens were against her. The 4 little ones didn't know her inner sorrow. Seeing that the house hadn't fallen, they were very pleasantly surprised. Mother, the house is fine. Suyu gave Erlang an annoyed look. You call this fine? Her voice was heavy. Erlang shuddered, frightened into quickly covering his mouth. Once dawn broke, the mess on the ground was clearly visible. Suyu rubbed her throbbing temples and signaled the 4 siblings to stay put. She walked quickly toward the village to seek help from the Lu family. Hearing that the roof had been blown off, Old Man Lu said nothing else. He rounded up his 3 sons, grabbed some tools, and rushed toward Lu Ji's house. Suyu followed behind, seeing the father and sons hurrying along. A corner of her long-hardened heart softened. Villagers were skilled in many crafts. Repairing a roof was nothing to Old Man Lu and his 3 sons. They saw the empty roof and immediately got to work without a word. Lu Fei picked up all the usable thatch from the ground. Lu Bo and Lu Zhong saw it wasn't enough, so they hurried to the riverbank to cut more grass. Old Man Lu brought a ladder from home and climbed onto the roof. He took the thatch pieces tossed up by Lu Fei and began rethatching. In just one morning, the father and 3 sons had rethatched and reinforced the roof. They even placed heavy stones on the 4 corners to prevent the wind from blowing it off again. Grateful, Suyu boiled all the brown rice she had bought into porridge. The 4 Lu men ate lunch at her house before leaving. As Old Man Lu drank the thick brown rice porridge, he watched the mother and children crouching by the stove eating yams, looking as if he wanted to say something. In the end, he said nothing. He set down the empty bowl and led Lu Bo and the others away. Plant those 2 mu of land quickly. It looks like it might rain in a couple of days. Suyu agreed and walked them out a short way before returning. She called De Lang, shouldered a hoe, picked up the jar of wheat seeds, and headed toward the 2 mu of land on the other side of the hill. Er Lang stayed home to look after the twins. Suyu felt that with the farming knowledge she had gained from Zhangshi yesterday, planting a field shouldn't be too much trouble. She didn't expect reality to hit her so quickly. The 2 mu of land belonging to Lu Ji's family had already been dug over once by its previous owner. Suyu only needed to dig holes, scatter the seeds, and cover them up. However, working from mid-afternoon until evening, she only finished 1/10. She looked at the vast expanse of remaining land in disbelief, doubting her own eyes. Even worse, she felt her body, which had just started to recover, was reaching its limit. She turned to look at De Lang, whose face was flushed red from the sun as he sat on the ridge. Mother and son saw despair in each other's eyes. Thinking about coming back tomorrow to endure this extreme torture again, Suyu was practically in tears. Thinking of Old Man Lu and his sons working from dawn till dusk, tending to over 100 mu of land year-round without rest, Suyu felt a sudden surge of respect for them. The sun was almost behind the mountains, and the cries of unknown birds echoed through the woods. Mother, it's getting dark. Exhausted by the labor, Suyu didn't even want to speak. She waved at De Lang, and the 2 of them returned home by the light of the moon. By the stove, Suyu chewed on a roasted yam, thinking she had to go into the mountains. Farming was out of the question. She never wanted to plant another field in her life. Early the next morning, Suyu went to the mountain to dig up enough yams for 4 days. Then she took a sickle and went to the place where the villagers usually gathered firewood. She cut a full load of wood. By the time the sun was high in the sky, Suyu arrived home, not stopping to rest. She wolfed down a few yams to fill her belly, took all the family's money, and walked quickly toward the neighboring Shaha village. There was a blacksmith in that village who made a living by forging farm tools. In that same village lived a family of hunters famous for miles around. All the men in that family were hunters. It was said they had once killed a spotted tiger, making them quite famous in the Jinshire town area. So you went to the blacksmith shop and bargained? Exchanging 30 copper coins for an old short knife. She weighed it in her hand and swung it a few times. The blacksmith looked at her in surprise. You handle that blade quite well, young lady. So you put the knife away and gave him a slight smile. Master, do you know where the hunter's house is? The blacksmith certainly knew. Go east to the lone house halfway up the hill. So you thanked him and turned to leave. It was midday, and the door to the hunter's house was slightly ajar. So you called out a few times at the door, and a spirited old woman walked out. Thinking she was there to buy meat, the woman said, "We don't have any left. It's all been taken to town. I'm here to borrow hunting tools. In return, I'll give you 1/10 of whatever I catch as a fee." Would that be acceptable? It was the first time the old woman had heard of someone coming to borrow hunting tools. It took her a moment to react. I can't make that decision. We'll have to wait until my son's return. And so you sat under a large tree outside the hunter's house. She waited until the sun began to sink in the west and the two brothers finally returned. Mother Yang explained Suyu's request to her two sons. The brothers walked over to Suyu skeptically. It wasn't that they were unwilling to help, but they were afraid she would break their things. Most importantly, they didn't believe she could actually catch anything. If I don't catch anything, I will compensate you for the wear and tear, with the appropriate repair fees. Seeing her tattered appearance, the brothers' hearts softened. They gestured for her to follow them into the house to choose. Their family had been hunters for generations, making their living from the forest. They had a full range of equipment, all of which was well maintained. Since they had a big haul yesterday, they didn't plan on going out again soon. The deep mountains here were home to man-eating beasts, as well as countless poisonous insects and snakes. So you picked a bough and decided on it. Hurrying along, she finally made it back to the Liu family's old house before the sky turned completely pitch black. Seeing her carrying a bow and arrows with a short knife in her hand, the people at the old house couldn't quite process it. I really can't manage the farming. I plan to go into the mountains tomorrow. I'll be gone for at least 3 to 5 days, perhaps as many as 7 or 8. As for the remaining wheat seeds, I must ask my 2 brothers-in-law to help me plant them, and for the 4 children, while I am away, I'll have to trouble my 2 sisters-in-law to look after them. Eldest sister-in-law, I know this isn't enough, so I'll owe you for the rest for now. I'll make it up to you when I return. After explaining, she left decisively, leaving the family at the Liu old house standing stunned in the wind. Zhangshi intended to take back her opinion of Suyu from a few days ago. She now felt, that they were truly cut from the same cloth. The third brother's new wife was just as thick-skinned as Liu Ji himself. Suyu got up before dawn. She boiled a full jug of water and filled a bamboo tube, then boiled 10 yams. She stuffed them into her pockets along with her fire starter. She carried the bow and arrows on her back, and the handle of her short knife was freshly wrapped with scrap cloth. Everything was ready. As the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, she headed toward the layered mountain ranges to the north. Just as she left, the door to the side room opened quietly. De Lang and Er Lang stood there holding their younger siblings' hands. Their stepmother had told them last night that she was going hunting in the mountains and told them to take good care of themselves at home. She said there would be meat to eat when she returned. While they were excited, they were also afraid that something might happen to her. Meanwhile, Suyu had entered the outskirts of the North Mountain. Once in the mountains, the woman was like a fish in water. The environment, similar to the mutant forests of the apocalypse, allowed her to quickly enter hunter mode. Birds and small animals in the forest would run past her from time to time. Suyu pulled an arrow and knocked it on the bowstring. She fired a shot toward the sky. A bird's cry of pain rang out, followed by a gray shadow, struggling and falling from the trees. Suyu pushed aside the waist-high wild grass in front of her and hurried toward where it fell. A gray bird with an arrow through its wing was struggling among the fallen leaves. My aim is a bit off. I need more practice. Suyu felt a bit disappointed as she pulled out the arrow, picked up the plump gray bird that couldn't fly, tied its wings with a rope, and hung it from her waist. She continued forward. As she walked, she used the animals and birds she encountered to regain her familiar feel for the weapon. By the time evening arrived, she was covered in various half-dead small animals. There were wild chickens, birds, a small squirrel, and even a nest of rabbits. The nest of rabbits was a real surprise. She was originally chasing a squirrel in the trees, but then a rabbit's head suddenly appeared on a small mound ahead. Seeing the prey delivered right to her, Suyu had no reason to let it go. With lightning speed, she found the nearby rabbit holes and sealed them with stones, leaving only one exit. She burned a pile of damp leaves, and with a puff of thick smoke, a whole nest of 7 rabbits came running out. The rabbits she caught alive were quite large. It was clearly a whole family. The 2 adults were plump, and the 5 little ones were also well-grown, with sleek, shiny gray fur. Suyu didn't like eating rabbit meat, but she loved rabbit fur. made into clothes, gloves, or scarves. It would be very warm in winter because she was carrying this nest of rabbits. The woman could only find a nearby sheltered mountain hollow to stop. She had finished the yams she brought, and only 1/3 of the water remained. There was a trickle of water on the rock wall of the hollow. Suyu used a stick she found in the woods to dig a small hole. After waiting a while, the water accumulated into a small puddle. It was now pitch black. She started a fire and killed the bird that had already exhausted itself from struggling. She roasted it for dinner. She had used a lot of energy today. One bird was far from enough to replenish it. Suyu roasted a wild chicken as well. The roasted meat was covered in a layer of fat, and every bite was bursting with flavor. Not having had meat for a long time, she ate ravenously. In no time at all, she had eaten the bird and the wild chicken clean. Full, she added a few more pieces of wood to the fire, and Suyu went to rest. She needed to save her strength. The temperature in the mountains fluctuated greatly between day and night. The woman could only cover herself with dry leaves. This would keep her warm and also hide her to avoid being discovered by large predators out hunting. In the middle of the night, it began to drizzle. The fire was extinguished, and a cold wind blew over. Suyu shivered from the cold, instantly awake. Beasts didn't like coming out in the rain. The woman left in the rain to continue looking for a place to stay. Finally, as the light of dawn broke, she found a place, a natural cave hidden among thick weeds. She was soaked through, and Suyu was tired and sleepy, but she didn't dare rest. She found some branches that weren't too wet and started a fire in the cave. With the fire, her rapidly dropping body temperature finally began to slowly rise. Only then did Suyu have time to observe the environment she was in. This was a naturally formed cave. The space inside wasn't large, but the height was good, and there were no animal droppings, meaning it wasn't some animal's home. It was an excellent base. The woman decided right then to stay there for the next few days. During the morning, Suyu cleaned all 7 rabbits. The skins were perfectly intact. After a simple treatment with wood ash, she roasted all the meat. When she wanted to eat, she could just heat it up. When the rain completely stopped at noon, Suyu concealed the cave and took her weapons to find a water source. Along the way, Suyu found many tracks of wild animals, most of which were from wolves and monkeys. There was at least 1 monkey troop and 1 wolf pack nearby. Suyu avoided them the whole time. On the way to the water source, she fired 2 arrows, hitting a yellow-throated marten and a roe deer. After yesterday's practice, her aim was now very precise. She deliberately spared them, not hitting any vital organs. There was no shortage of wood in the forest. Suyu cut a thick branch, tied the 2 prey to the branch, and carried them to the water source. This was a hollow in the middle of a hilltop, a naturally formed small pond. The water was shallow and clear, and there were even fish in it. What's even more bizarre was that the fish here didn't know how to hide. She caught them one after another. In a short while, Suyu caught 6 fish weighing 2 or 3 pounds each. She strung them all together with straw rope and hung them on her pole. She also filled her bamboo tube with water. Dusk was the time when the wild beasts in the mountains were most active. Suyu left the water source early, carrying today's catch and hiding nearby to observe. About 2 kilometers from the water source, she found a pile of fresh droppings. Suyu recognized it at a glance. It was left by an adult black bear. She was overjoyed inside. She didn't intend to miss this great gift. It was getting dark. Suyu returned to the cave with today's harvest. While roasting a fish as a side dish, she thought about how to lure the black bear out. But the weather was not in her favor. It started raining again that night, and this time, it rained on and off for 2 consecutive days. Suyu lay in the cave, looking at the struggling roe deer and the marten, and the wild chickens and squirrels she had caught along the way. She wasn't willing to go down the mountain just like this. She decided to keep waiting for an opportunity. 4 days had passed since Suyu entered the mountain. Fortunately, on the first day, Lu Bo and his 2 brothers had already finished planting the wheat seeds Suyu left behind. In the thatched house at the edge of Lu village, Lu Delang and Lu Erlang had built a fire in the room, but the wind still leaked into the house even with the fire, and it was still cold. The 4 siblings, in their thin clothes, simply moved to the bed. Only then did it feel a bit warmer. Not having seen Suyu for several days, Xingyang counted the days on her fingers one by one. Every day she would ask her eldest brother, "When is stepmother coming back? Is she never coming back? Don't talk nonsense. She'll be back when the rain stops." San Lang was quiet for a moment, then couldn't help but wrinkle his little face in worry and say, "Second brother, do you think she's been eaten by wild animals?" As soon as he finished speaking, Xingyang burst into tears. "What? I don't want stepmother to be eaten by wild animals." Her crying made the other 3 in the room fall silent. After 3 seconds of silence, San Lang couldn't hold back and started crying too. "Mother doesn't want us anymore. She must have run away, big brother." "Did she really run away?" Delang looked at the weeping twins. And then at Erlang, whose face was full of unease. The suspicion he had held for days seemed to be confirmed. A sense of being deceived, the bitterness and anger of being abandoned welled up in his heart. He was about to grit his teeth and tell his siblings to stop thinking about her when a knock suddenly came from the door. Erlang, Erlang. Open the door, it's your first aunt. Have you eaten yet? I've steamed a few brown rice buns. Come and get them quickly. Why are you two crying? Am I late? Are you hungry? I don't know when your stepmother is coming back. For the next few days, you should come to the old house for meals. She left me some copper coins to buy food. And told me to look after you. How will the four of you eat without me? Delang looked up in shock. She left you money? She didn't leave us and run away secretly? Eldest sister-in-law nodded, watching the two little ones take big bites of the buns. She muttered irritably. That stepmother of yours is just like your father. Her skin is thicker than the city walls. She only left a few copper coins, and with 4 mouths to feed. I don't know how much I'll have to add myself. It's been 4 days now. I don't know how much longer we'll have to wait for her return. The deep mountains are no place for a woman. If she, a weak woman, were to be. Speaking of this, she realized the 4 children were staring at her with wide eyes, looking as if they would bite her. If she dared say a single bad word about their stepmother, eldest sister-in-law quickly stopped talking. Feeling a bit annoyed, she gave the remaining 2 buns in the basket to Delang and Erlang. She reminded them again to come to the old house for morning and evening meals. I don't have time to deliver food to you every day. There's a lot of work to do at home. She muttered that they were quite protective of her. Then quickly left with her empty basket. As soon as she left, the 4 siblings, who had been full of sorrow a moment ago, immediately put on smiles, chewing on the warm brown rice buns. They realized their stepmother hadn't abandoned them. She even asked first aunt to look after us, big brother. She'll definitely come back with some prey. Erlang looked at the clearing sky. It was a brilliant blue. Looking at it, hope swelled in his heart. He said with certainty, she's so strong. She'll definitely succeed. Delang looked toward the undulating mountains to the north, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Eat quickly. When you're done, we'll boil some water. Wash your faces, they're filthy. Xingyang was the first to finish eating. She sat obediently on the threshold, waiting for her brothers to boil the water. She wanted to be the first to wash her face. Stepmother likes her good girl clean. Xingyang will listen to mother. And be a clean, good girl. After cleaning themselves up, Delang and Erlang silently picked up brooms and began to clean the house. Suyu, who was up in a tree, couldn't help it and let out a loud sneeze. It caused the knife in her hand to move, and she was nearly swiped by the black bear that had stood up. Fortunately, the combat instincts she had trained during the apocalypse were still there. The moment the bear's paw swung toward her, her body subconsciously moved to dodge. But with that one move, the black bear that she had kept trapped under the tree suddenly leaped up into the tree. Human and bear stood on a branch, less than 2 meters apart, staring each other down. So you didn't hesitate for a second. She grabbed an arrow, drew the bow, and quickly fired. The arrow struck the black bear without fail. However, it wasn't very powerful. It only wounded its skin and fur. Instead, it made it even more ferocious. With a roar, it lunged at Suyu. As the black bear lunged, Suyu had already switched to her sharp short knife. She leaned to the side and bent her knees, pulling the knife back. Using 90% of her strength, she aimed the knife at the only white spot on the black bear's belly and stabbed hard. Roar! Roar! Roar. A tragic roar that seemed to make the whole mountain range tremble echoed out. The black bear that was murderous just a second ago collapsed onto the ground in the blink of an eye. It landed with a dull thud. With the bloody knife in one hand, Suyu used her entire weight to stab the black bear as it rolled in pain on the ground. After a short, sharp wail, the black bear unwillingly took its last breath. Suyu, kneeling on the black bear, pulled out the knife. As was her habit, she raised her hand to wipe away the hot bear blood on her face. Looking at the dead black bear beneath her, her mouth curled up in a wide smile. With this, the winter should be much easier to get through. After Suyu dragged the black bear back to the cave, it was completely dark. This black bear weighed about 700 pounds. Suyu couldn't carry it easily, so she made a simple stretcher out of branches to drag it back. At dawn the next day, the woman tied the black bear and the other prey all together onto the stretcher and set off down the mountain. She didn't take the way she came. Instead, she went around the mountain range and headed directly toward Kaiyang County. The Qing Kingdom didn't have a curfew, but the city gates would be closed at night, preventing entry and exit. Suyu hurried along, dragging her heavy catch. She finally entered Taiyang County before the gates closed. To enter the city, an entry fee had to be paid, 1 copper won per person. At the city gate, Suyu sold a wild pheasant weighing a little over 4 pounds. She exchanged it for 80 wen. Only after paying the fee was she allowed into the city. The guards at the gate saw the black bear on her stretcher. Their expressions shifted from disbelief to sheer shock. In less than the time it takes an incense stick to burn, news that someone had hunted a black bear and brought it into the city to sell reached the ears of the managers of 2 local restaurants. Is it true? Absolutely true, manager. I've never seen such a large bear in my life. Its head is bigger than 2 of mine. Hurry up and go before the place across the street buys it. Suyu was currently eating wontons near the city gate. She ordered 5 bowls in one go. Pork stuffed wontons, 8 won per bowl. She placed 40 copper coins on the stall owner's counter, then sat calmly at the only square table. She picked up a bowl and began devouring them, mouthful after mouthful. The speed at which the stall owner cooked the wontons couldn't even keep up with the speed she ate them. She finished 3 bowls in a row. While the 4th bowl was still being prepared, the stall owner wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, "Customer, please wait a moment while I cook more." By the time manager Fan arrived, Suyu had just finished her 5th bowl of wontons. Her stomach was 80% full, and she looked content. Since transmigrating, this was her first decent meal. "Young lady, did you hunt this black bear?" Manager Fan asked in surprise. Hearing someone ask about the bear, Suyu stood up with her knife. "It's mine. Do you want it? If you take everything, I can give you a discount." Manager Fan looked Suyu over, then looked at the black bear again. He couldn't help but ask, "Did you carry all of this down the mountain alone, young lady? These animals are still fresh. I killed this black bear yesterday evening. The weather isn't hot, so they're in good condition." "Then how much do you plan to sell this bear for? How much are you offering?" She had been lured by the wontons as soon as she entered the city and hadn't had time to ask about the market price for game. Manager Fan thought for a moment and tentatively signaled a number, 80 taels. Suyu immediately began calculating in her head. Based on the highest living standards in Lu family village, a family of 5 would spend about 20 taels a year. These 80 taels were equivalent to 4 years of living well. That's about right. Bear meat isn't actually very valuable. It's just a bit more expensive than pork, selling for 50 or 60 won per pound. This black bear weighed 700 pounds. Taking an average, the meat alone should sell for around 40 taels. The main value lay in the hide and the gallbladder. 80 taels wasn't bad at all. "Fine. 80 taels, it's a deal." Suyu even generously threw in a wild pheasant for free. "Do you want me to deliver it for you?" Seeing the manager and the waiter standing helplessly before the bear's carcass, Suyu placed her knife and bow on the stretcher, lifted the entire thing herself, and tilted her chin at Manager Fan, signaling for him to lead the way. Watching the heavy mountain of a bear float past him, Manager Fan's jaw nearly hit the floor. Manager Fan became a bit incoherent. Suyu shouted from the front, "Let's go." She was waiting to get paid. With a heavy thud, Suyu pulled the black bear off the stretcher and onto the banana leaves prepared in the restaurant's kitchen. Many restaurant guests gathered around curiously, standing at the kitchen door, wanting to catch a glimpse of the massive beast. Some might only see something like this once in their lifetime. Suyu got blood on her hands while moving the bear. Manager Fan quickly had the waiter bring her a basin of hot water to wash up. Once Suyu was finished, the head chef was already discussing with his 2 apprentices about finding the butcher from the east of the city to help with the slaughter. Slaughtering a pig required skill, let alone a bear. Suyu was originally going to the lobby to settle the bill, but hearing the conversation in the kitchen, she leaned in and asked, "I know how to butcher a bear. I'm an expert at skinning and deboning. I don't even want pay. Just give me a late-night snack and a place to sleep for the night." The head chef was intrigued and immediately told his apprentice to ask Manager Fan if it was okay. The apprentice ran off and returned quickly. Manager Fan, who was advertising the bear meat in the lobby, came over as well. "Young lady, how about this? My restaurant will take all your game. I'll settle everything with you once I'm done here. As for the butchering, I'll pay you what it's worth. Go ahead and start. The restaurant has several empty guest rooms. I'll save one for you. You can stay here tonight." Manager Fan was now certain that Suyu was an extraordinary person. Suyu thanked him generously, asked the apprentice for an apron, and went into the kitchen to select tools. The head chef had a row of knives of various shapes and sizes. Suyu found a small, sharp one and began to work. Her movements were incredibly swift. In the time it took for 2 incense sticks to burn, Suyu had completely removed the bear hide. The 2 apprentices watched her with eyes full of admiration. If their own master hadn't been right there, they would have knelt down to ask her to be their teacher. The bear hide was taken out and hung on a pole in the backyard to dry. The manager would find someone to process it later. Suyu switched to a pointed knife to separate the bones, the paws, and the more precious parts like the gallbladder. In the front hall, after Manager Fan's promotion, people were already coming in wanting a taste of fresh bear paw. While Suyu chopped the meat, the head chef fired up the stove. The whole restaurant was brightly lit and bustling with activity. It wasn't until late at night that the restaurant finally closed. The head chef cooked a large pot of stew for everyone. A bowl of noodles and a large bun, eaten with the stew, was incredibly delicious. After the meal, Suyu was assigned a simple single guest room. There was still some hot water in the kitchen. Learning that she wanted to bathe, the two apprentices helped carry hot water for her. Suyu stood by the tub and looked at her reflection. She was startled by the disheveled woman in the water. She hadn't washed for several days in the mountains, and she was dirty and smelly. She quickly bolted the door, bathed, and washed her hair. She only had her dirty clothes and nothing to change into, but she couldn't go naked. Helplessly, she dried herself off and put the dirty clothes back on. It was already very late. She emptied the water and fell asleep as soon as her head hit the pillow. This sleep was the most comfortable Suyu had had since her transmigration. When dawn broke, Suyu woke up naturally. She freshened up simply, took her bow and short knife, and went to the lobby. When Manager Fan saw her, he hurried to give her the money. All her game had sold for a total of 85 taels and 310 wen. Manager Fan gave her 4 20-tael pieces, plus 5 taels in silver scraps and 310 copper coins. He handed it all to her in a cloth bag. When she took the money bag, it was a very heavy bundle. Suyu now understood what the phrase, "wealthy beyond measure," felt like. After leaving the restaurant, Suyu walked around the entire Kaiyang County and bought everything she was missing. 400 pounds of fine rice, 100 pounds of flour, 50 pounds of soybeans, and 50 pounds of millet, a total of 600 pounds of grain, enough for her and the 4 children for 4 months. They could spend the winter comfortably. After buying the grain, Suyu went to the fabric shop and bought 3 10-pound cotton quilts, 3 thin blankets, and 3 mats made of palm bark. She also weighed out 5 pounds of cotton, bought a bolt of the cheapest white cotton cloth, a bolt of blue cotton cloth, and a bolt of coarse red fabric. The red was for making new clothes for the new year. The shop also had second-hand clothes for sale, likely items taken as collateral from pawnshops. Suyu saw the prices were reasonable, then looked at herself, covered in dirt and looking like a mess. She decisively picked out an outfit for herself, and one for each of the 4 children. She also bought a pair of shoes for everyone. Suyu got leather boots for herself, and the children got coarse cloth shoes that were slightly used. Everything together cost 10 taels of silver. When she paid, Suyu couldn't help but gasp. No wonder everyone bought materials to make clothes at home. After leaving the fabric shop, she went to the general store to buy the necessary daily supplies, oil, salt, sauce, and vinegar, as well as pots, bowls, and ladles. After getting everything, Suyu went to the north gate and rented a bullock cart for 30 wen. The driver took her to load the grain she had bought, and they set off for Lu family village with a full load. This cartload of goods cost 18 taels of silver. Now she had 67 taels and 3,000 wen left. Suyu planned to save 50 taels as an emergency fund. With the remaining 17 taels, she intended to have some decent furniture made, repair that broken thatched cottage, and then build a perimeter wall. Without a wall, there was no privacy at all. She also didn't feel safe leaving things at home, always worrying they might be stolen. By evening, the two arrived smoothly at Lu family village. Suyu was eager to see the 4 little ones at home. But she didn't expect that as soon as she entered the village, an aunt would call out to her, "Little sister, hurry home and see, your Lu Lao-san is back." Lu Lao-san is back? Is he alive or dead? The words were on Suyu's tongue, but she felt it wasn't right to ask that aloud. She nodded to sister-in-law Zhou, then urged the driver to hurry. She rushed toward her home. Before she even reached it, she saw a crowd gathered in front of the cottage on the hillside. Eldest sister-in-law, he saw her at once. She shouted in surprise, "Sister-in-law, you're finally back." In front of the house, the circle of people all turned their heads to look at the cart. The crowd parted, and Lin Erbao's familiar face appeared again. Suyu tightened her grip on her knife. She told the driver not to be afraid, then walked forward alone. She opened her mouth and questioned him coldly, "Why are you here again?" Yes, Lu Ji was still alive, but he was in a half-dead state. His body was covered in bruises, especially his handsome face, which he was so proud of. It was now a mess. De Lang and his 3 siblings were gathered around him, trying to wake him up. When they saw Suyu appear, their eyes lit up with hope. Almost instinctively, they moved away from Lu Ji and ran towards Suyu. "Mother!" The 4 siblings stood behind her. They looked at her brand new clothes, then at the bullock cart loaded with goods. They knew she must have successfully hunted prey. They were overjoyed. Suyu looked at the 4 children and rubbed each of their heads one by one. She softly instructed Delang and Erlang, "Take your younger siblings inside. I'll handle things here." Delang gave Suyu a deep look, hesitated for a few seconds, then obediently led his siblings into the house. As soon as the siblings closed the door, Suyu's knife suddenly flashed. With lightning speed, she pressed it against Lin Erbao's neck. The watching villagers and the Lu family members all gasped at her action. The men Lin Erbao had brought immediately raised their weapons. surrounding Suyu and looking ready to strike. Whoever dares to move, I'll kill him. The cold edge of the blade sent chills down Lin Erbao's neck. The scent of blood on the knife's handle filled his nostrils. Lin Erbao's face broke out in goosebumps. Everyone, stop. Don't move. Wife, what do you mean by this? Suyu glanced at the half-dead man on the ground. I'd like to ask you what you mean first. I told you not to bring him back alive. What is this now? Lu Laosan was right. You really are a malicious woman. I kindly brought him back alive to you. Not only are you not grateful, you actually want to kill me. You brought him back. But what about the debt? Has it been wiped clean? Of course not. Suyu's eyes narrowed dangerously. Lin Erbao felt a chill in his heart as she stared at him. He really hadn't expected that Lu Laosan had such a fierce wife at home. Had he known, he wouldn't have come today. Just as he was about to urge Suyu not to be impulsive, she actually retracted her knife and reached out her hand. Lin Erbao was confused. He instinctively touched his neck. Relieved it was still there, he let out a long sigh. What are you doing? The IOU. Lin Erbao quickly stepped back. The men who had wanted to take the chance to attack Suyu were no match for her skills. And they knew it. With another glance, Suyu slowly took out the IOU. She had just shown to Old Man Lu and the others. There were 2 lines of crooked writing on the paper. It was Lu Ji's handwriting. It stated that Lu Ji had borrowed 20 taels from Lin Erbao, agreeing to repay a total of 22 taels including interest in 2 months. If not repaid by the due date, 1 tael of interest would be added for each day it was overdue. The date was July 30th. It was now October 28th. It had been overdue for about 28 days, making the total 50 taels. Suyu couldn't help but curse inwardly when she saw the number. It happened to match the 50 taels she had planned to save. What a joke. Old Man Lu's family worked hard all year round, relying on the crops from the fields and the money the women saved from weaving. At most, they could save 2 or 3 taels. This debt was an astronomical sum to any villager in Lu family village. If it weren't for the fact that Lu Ji was lying on the ground covered in bruises, Old Man Lu would have wanted to kick this rebellious son to death himself. Suyu was no exception. Her fists clenched and loosened and clenched. The sound of her grinding teeth was quite frightening. Our money doesn't just fall from the sky. My brothers and I have old mothers at home, as well as wives and children. Our whole families depend on us. If we can't get this money back, we'll have a hard time too. He said it as if Suyu were the one bullying him. Sister-in-law He and sister-in-law Chiao looked at the bullock cart loaded with goods. They wanted to ask Suyu if her trip to the mountains had been fruitful, and if maybe she could use that to pay the debt. But before they could open their mouths, they were glared back by Old Man Lu and Madame Zhang. Suyu took a deep breath. She couldn't let this go easily. She gave a hard kick to the backside of the man lying on the ground. His body trembled slightly, but he kept his eyes tightly shut, not daring to move. He really didn't dare to move. Suyu looked at the crowd surrounding her, closed her eyes, and sighed. Lin Erbao, Old Man Lu, Madame Zhang, come here. Let's talk privately. Old Man Lu and Madame Zhang looked at each other and nodded. Both elders had seen what just happened. Lao San's wife was truly formidable. She wasn't even afraid of Lin Erbao. Maybe she had a way. Lin Erbao was terrified inside, but in front of his men, he couldn't lose face. He tilted his chin at Suyu and went aside with her to talk. The 4 of them went behind the house, away from the prying eyes of the villagers. Father, Mother, I asked you both to come over because I want you to help me witness something. Witness what? For this debt, I'll owe you a favor. Exactly how much needs to be repaid? Give me a fair number. As for 50 taels, I'm telling you plainly, it's absolutely impossible. Suyu looked down at the knife in her hand, then at the whole Lin Erbao was tightly gripping. She knew Lin Erbao had people above him. Although the money was lent in Lin Erbao's name, it definitely wasn't his. If she had said this moments ago, that she would owe him a favor, Lin Erbao would have certainly laughed in her face. But now, he suddenly felt it was worth considering. When you're out in the world, you're bound to get in trouble. What if one day he needed a favor from Suyu? Lin Erbao was weighing his options, and Suyu didn't pressure him, waiting patiently. Old Man Lu and Madame Zhang stood side by side against the wall, their hearts pounding, feeling like they were about to jump out of their chests. Suddenly, Lin Erbao exhaled and looked helplessly at Suyu. Wife, what if I can't find you later? The corners of Suyu's mouth curled up. She gave a cold laugh but didn't respond. Lin Erbao realized he had no choice. Otherwise, he wouldn't get a single penny back and he might even lose his life here. Lin Erbao's intuition was correct. Suyu didn't care about Lu Ji at all. Whether he lived or died didn't matter to her. The only thing she cared about was staying in Lu family village, as a person with a legitimate identity so she wouldn't have to be a fugitive. Lin Erbao took several deep breaths, his mind racing. After doing some mental math, he finally gave a number. 38 taels. That's the absolute lowest. If even this can't be paid, there's no point in talking. Lin Erbao was also determined. This number was the absolute minimum he could offer. Otherwise, he couldn't explain it to his superiors and he'd be as good as dead anyway. Fine. Give me the IOU. You have a pen and paper, right? Write a new one, stating that Lu Ji's debt to you has been settled. Lin Erbao immediately felt relieved. He had pen and paper but he didn't know how to write. Suyu's contemptuous gaze immediately swept over him. Flustered and angry, Lin Erbao called his men to bring him the pen, ink, paper, and inkstone. He shoved them all at Suyu, looking like he was challenging her to write it herself. He didn't expect that she actually could write. There was a chopping block nearby, and Suyu used it as a table. With a few quick strokes, she wrote 2 copies of the receipt for the settled debt. The signatures were to be Lin Erbao and Lu Ji. Because she and Lu Ji were legally husband and wife, she could sign and seal it on his behalf. However, after Lin Erbao signed, Suyu didn't move her hand. Instead, she turned to look at the 2 elders. Father, mother, there's something you must promise me first, before I sign this document. Go on. I can help Lu Ji repay this debt, but from now on, his life belongs to me. In the future, I will have the final say in our household. You must stand with me and not obstruct any of my decisions. Otherwise, I won't sign this. We'll just let that scoundrel Lu Ji die out there. Daughter-in-law. I know our 3rd son is a scoundrel. Marrying him was a great injustice to you. Today, you put aside your grudges and are willing to repay his debt. I knew you were a good person. From now on, you are in charge of this family. If our 3rd son still doesn't repent after this, and continues to cause trouble, even if you beat him to death, your mother and I won't blame you in the slightest. All right. With your and mother's promise, I can rest assured.